Let me just address this right off the start. I have no idea which version of this movie I'm watching for this review because I streamed it. Is it the theatrical cut? Is it the director's cut? Is it the slightly longer director's cut? Is it the Italian Dario Argento cut? Is it the version where they slapped both the US and European cuts together into one movie? The sheer amount of different versions of this film that exist out there is just, it's kind of ridiculous. It's a bit of overkill. The version I watched had a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes, if that means anything. So the first time I saw Dawn of the Dead, I think I was around 10 years old, which, let's be honest, is way too young to be watching something like this. But hey, I had just played Resident Evil 3 and was obsessed with zombies. As a kid, the only scene I could remember was when the zombie climbs onto the box and gets part of its head chopped off by the helicopter. Partly because it's a great special effect, but also because I laughed my ass off. And yeah, I'm completely aware that it's not normal for a 10-year-old to laugh at something like that. But what can I say? I was not a normal kid. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time getting into the story here because, let's be honest, most of you have probably seen Dawn of the Dead already. It continues right after Night of the Living Dead, survivors hold up in a shopping mall, and chaos ensues. That's about all the plot summary you need. There's a lot of stuff that Dawn of the Dead gets right, and some it gets wrong. One of the huge things it does get right is its characters, which is something zombie movies always fuck up. They always make it so our heroes are either unstoppable soldier types or just idiots. We never just get people, the everyday average Joe. All our characters in Dawn feel like real people. They're relatable. I mean, come on, the scenes where they just screw around in the shopping mall, do you know how many times I've had dreams of just locking myself in a store and hiding away like in the back somewhere, like under a clothing rack or something until they close, and then coming out after the mall is closed and just exploring the mall by myself and just having free reign over everything? I would love to do that shit. The zombies are a bit of a mixed bag for me. I love the slow zombie, the moaning, shambolic figure, and I love how they're portrayed as completely brain dead. But why they all gotta look like Smurfs, dude? I get they weren't supposed to. Tom Savini said they were supposed to be gray, but they all ended up looking blue, and it's a bit jarring. Speaking of Tom Savini, he was the one responsible for the gore effects and for something with barely a budget to speak of that came out in 1978. Holy hell, did he ever do one hell of a job. Sure, I mean, the blood looks like paint most of the time, but the gore? I mean, some of that shit looks too real. I think Dawn's tone is probably the biggest issue I have with the movie. Some of the scenes are laugh your ass off hilarious, like when the mall gets turned back on and we get to watch all the zombies just bumblefucking around while the perfect music plays in the background like a carnival ride, just watching like a bunch of drunks hanging around. I love that shit. But scenes where I feel like the movie could have been genuinely disturbing and haunting is mostly ruined by the music choices. I mean, the entire beginning sequence in the apartment building should have been a really haunting scene. It's utter chaos. But the fucking music, dude, it just doesn't fit at all. It makes it look like a comedy. There's also a scene with a really glaring continuity error that it really doesn't take away from the movie at all. It doesn't affect the plot. It doesn't affect the movie's quality at all. It's just something that was really jarring to me, so I feel like I have to point it out. When Roger and Peter are taking the trucks to block the mall doors, there's a scene where Roger's face is just completely covered in blood, like he's rubbing it all over his face and shit, like he's putting on like lotion. But then as soon as he turns around, the blood's completely gone. I mean, it's almost as jarring to me as like when Michael Caine came out of the water in Jaws the Revenge and he's just dry all of a sudden. Like I said, has no effect on the plot, has no effect on the movie whatsoever. It's just something that I felt like I needed to point out. Fun fact, George Romero himself makes a cameo at the beginning, and so does Joe Palacio, the guy who would later play the asshole to end all beautiful assholes, Captain Rhodes, in Day of the Dead. I mean, a lot of fans like to think, myself included, that this is Rhodes, just as a youngin', because there's no, like, definitive time gap between Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, so for all we know, this is Captain Rhodes. He's just a cop at this point. The influence Dawn of the Dead had on popular culture is unmistakable. I was catching so many things in this that I realized ended up being homages and stuff like Resident Evil and whatnot. Now, I don't think Dawn of the Dead is a perfect movie like some people think it is, but it's entertaining as hell and easily one of the greatest zombie movies ever made, that's for damn sure. Which should be obvious since it helped define what zombie movies are today. If you haven't seen it by some stretch of the imagination, do yourself a favor and watch it. Now, which versions did you watch? That I have no fucking idea. That's gonna be your own little adventure that you're gonna have to figure out for yourself, because there's like Like I said at the beginning of this review, there's like a million different versions of this movie. Which one you want to watch for the first time is completely up to you.
We got this, man. We got this by the ass.
Play the movie. I want you to smile.